Have you ever felt that the more you give to the world, the less of you remains behind? For Daniel, every sunrise was not a gift, but a growing list of debts he owed to everyone else. He was the man who could never say no. A man whose heart was an open door with no lock. He spent his hours mending what was broken in others, ignoring the cracks forming in his own soul. But a house without a master begins to weep. Slowly, his own garden was claimed by the weeds. Neglect is a quiet shadow. It doesn't scream, it just slowly turns the vibrant into gray. While the town praised his kindness, the silence of his own home felt like a heavy, suffocating coat. He was a hero to the village children, a savior to the weary, but a stranger to himself. He looked into the water and saw a man he no longer recognized, a man serving 1,000 masters. The weight of the expectations he allowed others to place on him grew heavier with every passing day. The shadows of the trees lengthened across the square, mirroring the growing darkness in his chest. Then, the sky turned the color of a bruise. A storm was coming, one Daniel wasn't prepared for. He heard the whispers of the wind warning him to go home, but another neighbor's roof needed him. He climbed higher, choosing their safety over his own shelter, even as the first cold drops fell. The rain began as a soft warning, a cold touch on his cheek that he chose to ignore. Suddenly, the heavens opened. The village vanished behind a thick, gray curtain of relentless water. While he stood on another man's porch, his own cottage stood alone, unprotected and forgotten. When the storm finally passed, Daniel returned to find that the earth had reclaimed his world. The sunflowers he promised to tend were buried in the mud. Everything he worked for was gone. He realized then, you cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot protect others while you drown. Broken and lost, he walked toward the river, seeking the silence that only moving water can provide. The river was powerful, yet it was calm. It knew exactly where it was going and where it ended. By the shore stood Mr. Harris, a man who had seen 1,000 storms and survived them all. He didn't offer pity. He offered the kind of wisdom that only comes from years of standing still. "Look at the river, Daniel," Harris whispered. "It only reaches the sea because it has banks. Without those banks, it would spill into the fields and become a shallow, destructive flood. Your boundaries are your banks. Without them, your kindness has no direction. It just disappears. To truly save anyone else, you must first build the walls that keep your own spirit whole." In that moment, the mist began to clear. Daniel saw the river and himself in a new light. He walked back to the village not with a heavier heart, but with a newly forged purpose. The test came quickly. A neighbor approached, expecting the same old yes that Daniel always gave. For the first time in his life, Daniel felt the weight of the word no. And then, he said it. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. The neighbor simply nodded and walked away. He walked past the needs of others, and finally, for the first time, he walked into his own home. He didn't pick up a neighbor's tool. He picked up his own hammer and began to rebuild his life. Every nail he drove into the wood felt like a promise he was finally keeping to himself. He watched from his window as the town adjusted. People found new ways to help one another. He realized that by doing everything for everyone, he had been robbing them of their own strength. The season changed, and in the space Daniel had created for himself, life began to bloom. He planted flowers not to please the passers-by, but to nourish the man who lived within. Vibrant colors returned to his world, no longer muted by the exhaustion of 1,000 Hans. He learned the art of sitting still. He learned that silence is not empty, it is full of answers. Peace is not the absence of work, it is the presence of the self within that work. Respect began to grow in the village, not for what he could do, but for who he had become. When he did help now, it wasn't out of fear or debt, It was a gift given from a full heart. His hands were still the hands of a worker, but they were no longer the hands of a slave. When the next storm rolled over the mountains, the town felt the familiar rumble of thunder. But this time, Daniel wasn't on a roof. He was inside, watching the rain dance against the glass. He felt the strength of his own roof, the sturdiness of the banks he had built around his life. It was no longer a flood, it was a river, contained, purposeful, and free. He returned to the riverbank, but this time he wasn't looking for answers. He was the answer. The silence between the sounds of the water was no longer a void he felt the need to fill. His world had finally aligned. His no had given his yeses the power it always deserved. Mr. Harris watched from across the water, a silent guardian who knew the river had found its way. Kindness is a beautiful thing, but only when it is rooted in a garden that is also tended. The sunflowers in his garden stood tall, reaching for a sun that Daniel finally felt on his face. He learned that saying no to the world was the only way to say yeses to his own life. He was a river that knew its peace, flowing within the banks of self-respect and love, and in the quiet moments of the evening, he realized he was finally, truly, home. So tell me, have you built your banks? Or are you still waiting for the storm to take it all?